theme is focused on using digital and technology to accelerate gender equality and empowerment of women and children. This is a critical component towards advancing development and eradicating poverty, so much so that we cannot ignore the digital and technological development in that space.
None of these things we've talked about will be possible unless everyone, all women, all children have access to the internet. We have internet access of only 52% in our urban areas. So half of our population, especially in vulnerable areas, have no access.
Et enfin, une chose qui est importante pour moi, c'est la question de l'éducation pour permettre aux femmes d'avoir une place réelle dans les filières et les métiers de la technique, permettra d'habiter un monde peut-être un peu différent.
Laws were passed, but we soon realized that laws were not enough, that we also needed policies, that we also needed to open up a discussion on how technology and gender-based violence interact and what we can do as legislators, as politicians, in order to prevent, to punish, to avoid cases like this.
I think this work is really important, especially looking at the violence that women face in politics.
We women are insulted, degraded. We are ever more exposed to political violence. We urgently need legislation, but the kind of legislation that will be complied with
من
and will be
فضلكم
controlled,
الجلوس
because
أطلب
otherwise
منكم
we're just
الجلوس
promoting.
I ask you to be seated. I ask you to be seated, please, so that we can proceed with our work.
صورينا بقى شوية nous avons donné et comme il n'y a pas encore suffisamment de réglementation eh bien, les femmes sortent et elles veulent sortir de l'Internet et donc changent leur voix.
Les photos de
قولي لمدام بلدادي أطلب منكم الجلوس من فضلكم لاستئناف أشغالنا.
I ask you to be seated so we can resume our work. My dear colleagues, please.
Please, we can start. My colleagues, please. Ah oui, j'ai oublié. Vous attends, c'est tout. Je leur explique la introduction. الزملاء الأعزاء الزميلات
My dear colleagues, it is a pleasure to welcome you once again in this afternoon session of our forum. We will start with a panel discussion on women peace builders advancing sustainable peace. This topic is of the utmost importance, and it was selected by the Bureau of Women MPs to shed light on the women, peace and security agenda that is very relevant to the theme of the general debate on parliamentary diplomacy for peace. By focusing our discussion on women peace builders, the Bureau of Women MPs wanted to acknowledge the important role played by women in the forefront when it comes to negotiating with armed groups within communities to help the internally displaced and to limit gender violence in conflict. I invite you to explore how parliamentarians can improve the implementation of the Women, Peace and Security agenda and work with women peace builders to support them. So to inform our debates, I am honored to welcome a very impressive team, including Mrs. Pramila Patern, the Special Representative of the United Nations Secretary General on Sexual Violence in Conflict, and she has joined us. We welcome you. Thank you very much, Mrs. Patern. It is such a great honor to have you with us. We know how crucial the role of the United Nations is, and we are pleased to work together to reveal, denounce, and end impunity on sexual violence in conflict. Mrs. Adriana Quinones, the Deputy Head of the UN Women Geneva office. I would like to thank you for joining us today. The IPU and UN Women have a long and fruitful history of collaboration and partnership, and we assure you of our support to this collaboration. Thank you very much to UN Women for its work and support to women everywhere. We also welcome Mr. Thomas Greminger, the Executive Director of the Geneva Center for Security Policy. Thank you very much for joining us today, sir. It is a great pleasure and honor to welcome you. The work and initiatives led by the Geneva Center for Security Policies are very important, and we are pleased to work together. On behalf of the global network of women peace builders, we will have online Mrs. Maria Victoria Cabrera Palezza. So thank you very much for your presentations, and with a lot of with a humble attitude, I also received testimonies from women peace builders. I would like to thank them for their contributions, for their field contributions, and for their participation with us. I will ask our keynote speaker, Mrs. Paten. The floor is yours. I give you the floor, Mrs. Paten.
Distinguished women parliamentarians, ladies and gentlemen, it is an honor to address this forum on the occasion of the 148th Assembly of the Inter-Parliamentary Union, which provides space for strategic reflection on the mounting challenges for the full implementation of the Women, Peace and Security agenda, of which my mandate is part of. Since the signing of a framework of cooperation between my office and the IPU in June 2021, I feel very much part of the IPU family. And I would really like to thank the Secretary General of the IPU for his active support to my mandate and commend all his efforts in promoting the engagement of parliamentarians in addressing conflict-related sexual violence. Madam Chair, this event comes at a dire time for global security. Conflicts are raging, tensions are rising, coups are erupting. We meet at a time when the impact of conflict on women and girls have never been starker, as millions suffer the consequences of the wars of men. As we speak, in Sudan and Haiti, women and girls are being traumatized and terrorized by sexual violence. In Afghanistan, the denial of women's basic rights is wrecking lives and depriving people of life-saving assistance. 2 years since Russia's invasion of Ukraine, displaced and refugee women and girls are at an increased risk of being preyed on by traffickers. In the Middle East, women and girls are disproportionately affected by the ongoing violence, bloodshed, and displacement. Women and girls were among the many victims of the 7th of October attacks by Hamas. Women and children are more than half of the victims of the relentless bombing of Gaza. The collective challenges before us are daunting. The figures speak for themselves on the dire state of our world. Displacement due to conflict and persecution at a record high, global military expenditure hitting a record-breaking of over USD 2.2 trillion, more than 600 million women and girls currently live in conflict-affected countries, and the number of people forced to flee war and persecution has surpassed 110 million. Nearly a quarter of a century after the adoption of Security Council Resolution 1325, women's full, equal, and meaningful participation in building peace remains an aspiration. In peace processes, negotiating parties continue to regularly exclude women, while atrocities, including brutal sexual violence against women and girls, continues to occur. Peace processes are still an almost exclusively male domain. Yet, the one thing that should be non-negotiable at the peace table is the participation of women. Of 18 peace agreements reached in 2022, only one was signed by a representative of a women's group. Among the 5 UN-led or co-led peace processes in 2022, women's representation stood at only 16%, compared to 19% in 2021 and 23% in 2020. In peace processes led by member states or other organizations, women were almost completely absent. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, while militarization is on the march and democracy is in retreat, we are witnessing shrinking civic space, virulent backlash against gender equality, rising reprisals against women's rights defenders and journalists, and women's civil society organizations chronically underfunded. It is estimated that between 70 and 90% of conflict-related sexual violence incidents involve the use of a weapon, in particular firearms. And yet, less than 1/3 of voices heard in arms control forums are those of women. Women still remain marginalized from military decision-making. Impunity for war crimes against women, including sexual violence, remains the rule and accountability the rare exception. Women peace builders and human rights defenders continue to be targeted through gender-based hate speech and reprisals. New threats, misogynistic attacks, and incitement to violence are emerging from the largely ungoverned digital space, compounding the patterns and trends of conflict-related sexual violence and hampering the safe participation of women in public life. Amidst this world in chaos, the clock is ticking down to the 25th anniversary of Resolution 1325. The pioneers of the WPS agenda understood the links between equality, social stability, and durable peace. Resolution 1325 not only articulated a problem, it also prescribed a transformative solution. It forever changed the face of peace and security by affirming that no conflict crisis is gender neutral and no effective response can be gender blind. This grim backdrop should give us all renewed urgency to ensure its full implementation, to protect hard-won gains and push back on the pushback, we need an urgent rebalancing of power and resources. Women have had enough of being shut out of the decisions that shape their lives. Enough of their work going unrecognized. Enough of threats and violence. And enough of promises left unfulfilled. Women demand concrete actions to make real strides forward. As parliamentarians, you have a critical role in finding solutions to these issues. You can all play a crucial role in shifting this paradigm of women's exclusion to a context in which women can fully and meaningfully participate at all levels of decision-making on peace and security and at all levels of political and civil life. That requires pushing fair representation in national and local governments, cabinets, and parliaments, as well as setting ambitious targets for women on negotiating teams. Parliaments must continually expand the circle of allies and forge strategic partnership with civil society and women's organizations working to build peace at the local level. Women and their organizations are often present in regions where international actors are not. Women know exactly where the humanitarian corridors are and negotiate access with parties to the conflict. Everywhere, women are the first responders, yet many actors perceive them as new to this field. Women have always been at the grassroots level and are trusted by local communities. It is therefore increasingly important to bridge this gap between the relevant work carried out by women at the local level to build peace, resolve tensions, ensure protection and assistance with the policy level scenarios where legislative frameworks are elaborated and adopted. This alliance between women working on operational and policy responses is essential for many reasons. To ensure that all forms of sexual violence used as a tactic of war are criminalized, to ensure that security sector actors are required by law to be gender responsive, to guarantee that women have a seat and are heard in peacemaking, security, and reconciliation processes, to amplify the rights, needs, and aspirations of survivors, not as passive beneficiaries, but as rights holders, stakeholders, and the co-creators of solutions. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, my mandate as Special Representative of the Secretary General on Sexual Violence in Conflict was established 15 years ago. Though sexual violence has been part of every war from antiquity to the nuclear age. Important progress has been achieved. The Security Council has set up a robust normative framework consisting of 10 resolutions on women, peace, and security, including no fewer than 5 specifically addressing sexual violence, which recognize these crimes as a threat to collective security, an impediment to the restoration of peace, and a crime of concern to the international community as a whole. For the first time, wars were being looked at through the eyes of women and girls whose bodies had been part of the battlefield. While significant and normative and institutional progress has been achieved, words on paper are not yet matched by facts on the ground. Sexual violence continues to be used as a tactic of war, terrorism, and political repression. The annual report of the Secretary General on conflict-related sexual violence for the year 2023 and compiled by my office paints a disturbing picture of the gap between commitments and compliance, resolutions and reality, with an increase of 49% of UN-verified cases from the previous year. To close the implementation gap, we must empower women's organizations and politically active women, including those working on the front lines, and protect them from any form of reprisal. Women civil society activists are part of the irrepressible engine of this agenda, but they cannot drive peace processes when their own physical integrity, security, and rights are under threat. This causes irreparable setbacks to achieve gender equality and sustainable peace. Ladies and gentlemen, the clock is ticking down to the 25th anniversary of Resolution 1325 and 13 years since the Beijing Platform for Action. We have a new momentum towards the recognition of gender equality and women's empowerment at the heart of sustainable progress for all with the adoption of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. We need to implement the Women, Peace and Security Agenda in full now. I urge all of you to make the most of the upcoming Summit of the Future in September to push for progress on women, peace and security. The summit represents a chance to reform and revitalize multilateralism so that it meets the challenges of today with its new agenda for peace, putting women's leadership and participation at the center of decision-making. Many of you are coming to the table with new energy, new ideas, and new commitments. This is an important opportunity to shape the way in which we address our global challenges in the next decades. We need to translate the energy, commitment, and focus on this room into concrete change on the ground and on the lives of women. It is time to write a new chapter guided by women's leadership and participation that reflects the interests and needs of a historically excluded 50% of the population. The state of the world demands it, and women and girls rightly expect nothing less. Thank you.
شكرا جزيلا.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your very valuable speech and opening the way for further collaborations. And in front of this, or facing this very big number of violence against women, I would like to see this opportunity to denounce the violence in Gaza, and I ask to put an end to this inhumanitarian practices. We have with us Mrs. Adriana Quinones, Deputy Head of UN Women in Geneva office. Could you please share with us where we are today in the implementation of the Women, Peace and Security Agenda, notably in its 4 pillars of prevention, participation, protection, and peace building and recovery, and where the main gaps and challenges lie?
Thank you very much. And good afternoon, good morning, good evening to all the distinguished parliamentarians, colleagues, and friends, to those in person and to those who are following the panel online. I am honored to join this timely discussion today on the 147th Assembly of the Inter-Parliamentary Union, a key partner of UN Women, to address the implementation of the Women, Peace and Security Agenda in its 4 pillars. And please bear with me because I will repeat some of the great important statistics that our keynote speaker has presented, but it's worthwhile to listen to them many times so that we really understand where we are in this very crucial agenda. In terms of participation, despite some progress made in participation, women remain largely excluded for formal peace processes and negotiations. Women participate as conflict party negotiators or delegates in 4 of 5 active United Nations-led or co-led peace processes in 2022. But let's think about what a difference it makes to have women at the table. The peace process in Colombia, which is the one that to date is an example for the world in terms of integrating a gender perspective, integrating women's networks, the voices of women at different levels, has been responsible for a specialized justice for peace, where sexual violence during conflict cannot be part of an amnesty. And this was the struggle of women's organizations for more than 50 years to have their rights recognized, to have the violations that they suffered put on the table, but to transform the country, to transform peace and have justice. So at the Security Council, we have only 46% of people that were invited to speak that were women, compared to 19% on average between 2013 and 2017. UN Women has been a key partner of women's organizations, including with the Women, Peace and Humanitarian Fund that has supported female negotiators in peace processes, grassroots organizations to participate where it matters most, but it's so crucial that what's happening at country level is heard at the global and regional levels in meetings like this ones, in meetings like the Security Council. For that, you can count on UN Women. In terms of protection, armed conflicts are escalating around the world, with the number of women and girls in conflict-affected contexts increasing by 50% in 2022. They face an elevated risk of sexual gender-based violence, which continues to be a weapon of war. We see it here in Geneva at the Human Rights Council. The commissions of inquiry are documenting the violations to women and girls in all conflict settings, but are also a source of information to seek justice. Justice for survivors is the only way that we will have any transformation after conflict. In terms of prevention, the pillar of prevention is crucial to stop violence from happening in the first place, to create a vision of society that includes women, that enhances their visions and the possibilities, that creates support for their participation in the economy, in justice, in all aspects of society. And so we have in Ukraine, for example, the UN Women Country Office has supported the design of a strategy for the prevention of conflict-related sexual violence. We have supported strategies for women's economic participation as a means to transform the situation after the war, as survivors, not as victims, as the builders of a new society. In terms of peace building and recovery, rebuilding and healing require a gender-focused approach, something that until fairly recently was not even taken into account. And it's because of women's participation and setting of this agenda that we have now so many good examples. And in this regard, UN Women supports gender-sensitive security sector reform in the mobilization and reintegration of ex-combatants. UN Women works to strengthen the capacity of the national security systems to investigate, prosecute any sexual related violence in conflict. But I'll give you an example, and that is of indigenous women in Guatemala, which for so many years fought to seek justice for conflict-related sexual violence and slavery, and they found it. After a struggle that took many years, they were able to get a sentence with 18 measures of reparations that is being implemented right now. This sentence was adopted in 2016, and it has taken a very long time to have all institutions, a whole of government approach in the implementation of these 18 measures of reparations. They are an inspiration for us, and UN Women continues to support that. And now that we are reaching the 30 years of the Beijing platform that put at the center women's participation in peace building, in peace processes, we launched the Global Compact on Women, Peace and Security and Humanitarian Action. This compact has as one of its key features monitoring and accountability, because some of the key gaps have to do with the commitments made at local, national, international levels. So Generation Equality, a forum that was launched in 2021 with the support of Mexico and France, is still alive and kicking and going to the implementation of the promises of the Beijing platform. Another key issue is coordination. A lot of impressive and impactful work is already being done, but how do we create a tipping scale, a mass of solutions, of actions that really change the situation of women and girls. So this is one part of the compact. And of course, promoting wider access and visibility. This compact is a mobilizing force pushing forward women's rights and gender equality in conflict and in humanitarian settings. So without repeating too many of the statistics, what I would like to share with you is how important it is to have a 1325 National Action Plan, fully funded, evaluated, and we have so many countries that are now in their third Women, Peace and Security National Action Plan. And this gives us hope because we're learning from the implementation and bringing those cases of sexual violence, bringing the voices of women in rebuilding the country, their participation in the labor markets, in the economy, is the way to enhance peace. More and more young women and girls are demanding a place at the table, are demanding that they are consulted and invited to participate. Also, along with the great mobilization of Indigenous women, Afro-descendant women, women with disabilities, all persons that require a specific approach and that their voices are heard. So for us, it's about financing women, peace and security, and gender in the humanitarian action. UN Women is the secretariat of a fund that has already provided funding to more than 100 organizations around the world to increase the participation of women and girls at the negotiation table, documenting any of the issues that are happening in conflict and ensuring that peace is sustainable because of their participation, strengthening the grassroots organizations, the women's movements that are the ones who have us here today. Of course, the participation of women as negotiators, as facilitators, and women's economic security and access to resources, an aspect that we had neglected until recently, and now that we're looking at a more holistic approach, what are the needs of women and girls? What are the services that do they have access to or are denied these services? And women leadership and agencies and an agency across the peace, security, and humanitarian sectors. So protection for women and girls in crisis context, including human rights defenders. And as we had seen, persecution against human rights defenders is on the rise. The civil spaces are closing down. So more than ever, it is about you as parliamentarians to be in this struggle with us to open spaces for women and girls in all of their diversity, with all of their visions. We just closed the Commission of the Status of Women yesterday in New York with a great set of agreed conclusions around investing in women to accelerate progress. So it's up to you as parliamentarians to make sure that those agreed conclusions do not stay there as text, but are lived reality for women and girls. So to close, I would like to echo the messages that we have heard in this last month of celebrating International Women's Day, the Commission of the Status of Women. More women's leadership and meaningful participation in peace building is crucial for long-lasting peace. Women's contributions are at the heart of rebuilding a new society that's being discussed now, as we have heard, for the Summit of the Future, a new world, a new vision for peace and security. And of course, there is not complete truth, justice, or reparation without women's inclusion. I thank you.
Thank you for this very informative presentation, Ms. Quinones. And surely your presentation is going to open a debate with all the colleagues. I now give the floor to Mr. Thomas Greminger, Executive Director of the Geneva Center for Security Policy. Could you please present how the new Geneva Women, Peace and Security Impact Group initiative, launched together and in collaboration with the International Gender Champions, can support the actions of women peace builders and advance the Women, Peace and Security Agenda, the WPS agenda? The floor is yours, Mr. Thomas.
Madam Chair, dear members of Parliament, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, we are definitely at an inflection point. As we witness the biggest rise in interstate conflict since Second World War, it seems to me to be no coincidence that this is accompanied by a regression in women's human rights, with generational gains hanging in the balance. The question of how we collectively can work cooperatively together to ensure our security and indeed our survival is highly political, and those politics are gendered. I am a firm believer in multilateralism, in the power of dialogue, and in the need to overcome differences. The Women, Peace and Security agenda has helped us advance all three. Galvanizing unanimous support at the UN Security Council in the year 2000 and commitment by 107 countries who have developed national action plans since. And I personally know how important these national action plans are, having developed Switzerland's first national action plan in 2007. And I would very much endorse Adriana Quinones' point and encourage anyone who does not yet have one to develop a national action plan. The WPS agenda has ensured that civil society actors are heard at the highest levels of governance, and created multiple channels for peace building and conflict resolution. However, they can only influence policy and decision making if those in power listen. In today's polarized environment, characterized by mistrust and insecurity, and not just between states, but also within states, we have a lot of work to do. The shift towards defensive policies and militarization is moving us away from prioritizing and protecting human rights. With $2.2 trillion being spent on arms, obviously less is available for development and prevention. A huge crowding out effect. Almost 30 years after the Beijing Platform for Action, it is clear that progress is not inevitable. Sexism, discrimination, and gender-based violence persist, including atrocities being committed against groups because of their sex or gender characteristics. We await the International Criminal Court adjudication of gender persecution as a crime against humanity in the Al-Hassan case as a stark illustration of how bad things actually are. The new agenda for peace calls on leaders to step up, and ahead of the Summit of the Future, myself and fellow gender champions, among them Madeleine Rees, here today, have chosen to form an impact group. This impact group has three aims. First, to facilitate dialogue and strengthen international cooperation between member states, international organizations, and civil society to improve coherence and ensure prioritization of the WPS agenda within international Geneva. Second, support the implementation of the Global Compact on Women, Peace and Security in Humanitarian Action, a concept that Adriana Quinones has referred to as well before, and encourage more actors to become signatories and make commitments. And this would very much include also member states. And thirdly, collectively develop evidence-based recommendations and policy language that promote a human rights-based approach to conflict prevention, integrating the perspectives of diverse stakeholders. Ladies and gentlemen, at my center, the Geneva Center for Security Policy specifically, we are supporting women leaders across sectors, including women in civil society, government, women mediators, humanitarian responders, and the military. We are also educating about more inclusive leadership practices for all and working to overcome the gendered structural barriers that exist. Fundamentally, we see a need to do things differently at the systemic level. And that starts by building trust, addressing fears and insecurity, and upholding human rights and the rule of law. And one area I would like to highlight here is how we can address feelings of insecurity and fears of the younger generation, and particularly men. A recent Gallup poll suggests that the next generation is, for the first time, becoming divided along gendered lines. Young men are now becoming more conservative and young women more progressive. This could have far-reaching implications beyond the ballot box. And I ask myself why this is happening. It seems to me that it may be linked to the rise in interstate conflict I mentioned in my opening, and the roles that men have played in history defending and protecting. I believe it is up to us leaders to create a credible path forward so that next generation does not revert back to outdated models that no longer serve us, but is able to celebrate and uphold what is working and change what has not. I thank you for your attention, and I'm looking forward to hearing the views of others, particularly of women peace builders in this important discussion, to see how we can move forward together. Thank you.
شكرا لك السيد غريمينغر توماس.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas Greminger, for this inspiring contribution. I would now like to turn to Mrs. Maria Victoria. So it's in fact a video message from the global network of women peace builders to look into the importance to include the voices and participation of women peace builders in discussions with national and global policy makers. So we turn now to the video message.
Good morning.
معنا على الخط. مرحبا بك.
Peaceful
She
greetings
is
to all of you.
with us
Can
online,
you hear
apparently.
me? Yes, I am online. Can you see and hear me?
نعم تفضلي.
Yes, we can. Please go ahead.
Okay. Thank you. Peaceful greetings to everyone. And thanks to the International Parliamentary Union for convening this critical conversation. And thanks to Special Representative of the Secretary General, Pramila Patten, Ms. Quinones from UN Women, and Mr. Greminger from the Geneva Center for Security Policy. There are many reasons why parliamentarians and women peace builders and women's rights organizations broadly should work together, and I will highlight a few. Women peace builders have access to timely information on the ground, and they speak with victims and survivors of violent conflicts and humanitarian emergencies who live in the same communities as they are. So in that particular case, they are victims or survivors themselves. And the importance of including their voices and participation in decision-making is good for everyone, not just parliamentarians, but the local communities and the wider population. The importance of the information that women peace builders bring can inform and influence better policies and improve the implementation of the Women, Peace, and Security agenda. On the one hand, parliamentarians play a crucial role in translating the issues that we, women peace builders, raise into laws and policies that will make transformative and positive changes in the lives of women and girls and gender diverse individuals and entire communities and societies. So parliamentarians and women peace builders and civil society ensure that laws and policies do not remain on paper, which is often the case, unfortunately, but instead will translate words into action and promises and commitments into our collective achievements. Next, parliamentarians have direct access to government processes and systems, so they can advise women peace builders and civil society to advocate effectively to see the changes and the transformation that they want to see. And I at this point, I would like to thank Ms. Quinones and Mr. Greminger in highlighting the importance of global mechanisms such as the Women, Peace and Security and Humanitarian Compact. And I'm also proud to share with you that I co-chair this compact with the government of Norway, with my organization, the Global Network of Women Peace Builders, representing a civil society, including women's rights organizations and youth organizations. And the compact is critically important because of its intersectional, intergenerational, and emphasis on localization for implementation of the Women, Peace and Security agenda, and the fact that we work with a broad range of signatories, as we refer to them, such as civil society, governments, private sector, research institutions, and private foundations. So we work across all of those different types of organizations and across different regions. Another important platform, global platform that we have, and again, I would like to mention proudly that we, the Global Network of Women Peace Builders, is one of the two initiators of the Women's Peace and Humanitarian Fund. And from the beginning, we had two non-negotiable asks when we were forming this, the fund, or back then we referred to it as financial discussion group. And those two are that women's organizations, including especially women peace builders and those who work in humanitarian emergencies, should have a say in the governance structure of the fund, and that we're not just mere recipients waiting for everyone else's decision on how to manage the fund, but have the role in managing the fund, including in the resource generation. And of course, in ensuring that the fund prioritizes the grassroots women's organizations, and that's what happened. And I'm very proud to have been a part of it, and we continuously support the Women's Peace and Humanitarian Fund. And I also would like to express my thanks to UN Women for supporting us from the formative stage until now. I also want to mention the other platform, which is critical for civil society and government engagement with parliamentarians, and that is the Women, Peace and Security Focal Points Network, which is a group of member states that lead the implementation at the national level in partnership, of course, with civil society, and also in regular engagement with parliamentarians. And all of these platforms are very useful in terms of putting on the surface and sharpening our messages to present at the Summit of the Future, that also include, very importantly, the new agenda for peace. We have heard UN officials and those from other multilateral institutions, individual and groups of government leaders and parliamentarians speak about their support to women civil society leaders, women human rights defenders, and women peace builders. But we also oftentimes see those words as just words and not really translating into actions that address the very big problem of the shrinking civic space for us to engage. So, for example, it has gotten more difficult to get accreditation from the UN Economic and Social Council, or ECOSOC. It is very hard to even secure IDs to attend important UN discussions on policies and policy implementation. So my call now is we really need all of you to work together because we want to see you walk the talk. We want the support to women peace builders and other civil society implemented in real action that will enable both of us to participate in discussions and decision making. But I must also say that as we hold governments accountable, including parliaments, the judiciary, and their executive branches, we also should collectively hold families accountable. Often it's families who prevent women, especially those who have been victims of violence against women or sexual violence in conflict and other forms of violence and marginalization and discrimination, to keep those to themselves, because speaking out will bring dishonor to the family. So we need to hold families accountable, and by extension communities, that speaking up as victims doesn't mean that it's their fault. We need to emphasize on the perpetrators and the accountability, and we need governments and parliamentarians work with us on this. Parliamentarians, of course, play a crucial role in demonstrating and supporting women's leadership. And, you know, the more we see parliamentarians, especially women parliamentarians, who make a difference, positive difference in communities and societies, and showing them the path, how to get, showing women peace builders and other civil society actors to see the path and be supported, how to get there in those positions of leadership is very, very important. We have shared agenda in advancing women's leadership and participation in decision making, and it is to all of our benefits if we work together, because by doing so, we work better. So my last point on this is, let's create platforms for regular engagements and exchange between women peace builders and other civil society actors with parliamentarians, and that we don't do this only occasionally, but on a regular basis, and open up spaces and ensure their participation and protection for doing that. I'll stop here, and I look forward to our discussion.
شكرا السيدة ماريا فيكتوريا على المداخلة.
Thank you, Mrs. Maria Victoria, for this valuable input. We have to showcase the importance of women leadership. I would like to also thank the Global Network for this contribution. Last but not least, we would like to share with you video testimonials from women peace builders who are involved in grassroots actions in different countries. So we turn to a video again.
Hi, my name is Olin Montero. I'm from Indonesia, and I'm a member of the Peace Women Across the Globe network. I've been organizing program here in Indonesia for the past 16 years. I've been organizing dozens of women's peace table in East Nusa Tenggara, in Sulawesi, and Maluku to create spaces for women to speak and create together what kind of peace that we want to talk about. And also we look forward for a new way of talking about peace through art, for example, art performances and also workshop to support survivor of violence during the conflict, and also how to organize more diversity for young people, women, disability, indigenous group involved in this process, not just process that happen in bigger islands or nearest to the policy making, for example. How to create these participatory activities and increase women's and marginalized group participation in the peace process has to be increased more. Thank you very much. Hi, my name is Olin Montero. I'm from Indonesia, and
Hi, I'm Dr. Tekla Namachanja Wanjala, a woman peace builder from Kenya. I work for Shalom Center for Counseling and Development, which operates in Mount Elgon region, a region that was affected by armed conflict that drew in a militia operation and the military operation. The conflicts in Mount Elgon really traumatized community members. And as we all know, when a community is traumatized, there is a lot of hopelessness, a lot of helplessness. And so our entry point into this community is trauma healing. And we focus on women, the youth, and the elderly. What we do is that we use our own traditional method of healing, that is circle methodology, where we bring together women to sit in a circle and share about their painful experiences. During the sharing, there is a lot of mourning and grieving. And it's out of this mourning and grieving that the women really come to deal with their emotional wounds. We've experienced women coming into this circle when they are so hopeless, when they don't know how to deal with their family members, when they don't know how to answer some of the questions that they are raised by their children, especially those whose fathers had been killed in the conflict. But at the end, women have really appreciated the sessions that they have gone through. Women have left the sessions with a lot of hope, with a lot of resilience, with a lot of renewed energy to go and support their family members. Out of these circles, women have organized themselves into income generating activity. And from the healing, from trauma healing, we can see they are also improving their livelihood. Women have also mobilized themselves into groups to prevent the violence that is really a source of trauma in this community. For example, during the last general election in Kenya, women organized themselves into groups and accompanied political rallies where they had to send messages of peace, mobilizing the communities to refuse to be incited by the politicians. And for the first time in Kenya, for a long time, for the first time, Mount Elgon was able to have peaceful elections without violence. As I conclude, I would like to emphasize, especially in Mount Elgon, are at times usually due to revenge. But with our intervention with trauma healing, the youths, the elders, and the women who participated in the program were able to heal and prevent the revenge. And that is why we had peaceful election. My call to leaders is to support such initiatives at the community level, because it's at the community level where we have conflicts taking place, where we have relations being interfered, where we have a lot of anger, and that is how we are engaged in vicious circles of violence. But such a little or such a small intervention is able to prevent more trauma and more conflicts from taking place. Thank you.
Thank you very much for these very important testimonies. And we would also like to thank Mrs. Deborah Schibler as well as Mrs. Madeleine Reeds for their video testimonies. I would also like to thank you once again for accepting our invitation to and participating in this session. Ladies and gentlemen, now I will open the floor for discussions, questions, and input. Please speak about the following. One, what can we do to uplift the women peace and security agenda? How can parliamentarians contribute even greatly in the implementation of this agenda by unifying their efforts with women peace builders? Secondly, how can parliamentarians support women peace builders' work in their countries and in the countries where there are armed conflicts? Thirdly, how can parliamentarians guarantee the security of women peace builders, and how can they involve them in decision-making processes regarding security and peace, and how can we ensure that they have access to the resources needed for their vital actions? Given the limited time we have, you have 2 minutes to speak. Thank you. We will first or Zena will give us the list of delegations wishing to speak. First, Russia. So, Russia, 2 minutes, please. I give you 2 minutes. Russia, you have 2 minutes.
I would like to welcome all the participants. I would like to say that the whole world is shocked by the horrific crime that happened near Moscow in a concert hall. As of today, 150 people died and 120 were wounded. There were many of women and children among them who were indefenseless in the face of these terrorist atrocities. And the rescue workers found women hugging their children. I would like to thank all of those who condemned the act of terrorism and spoke up today. This tragedy shows that we must continue our efforts and promote international cooperation to counter the terrorist threat, and we must eliminate this threat without any political agendas or double standards. I would like to ask everyone to honor the memory of the victims of this terror attacks by holding a minute of silence. Thank you so much. Thank you. And I would like, on the topic of our discussion, I would like to say that we're discussing women peace builders, those who create, those who promote peace. In Russia, a woman is the custodian of peace and traditional values, which is essential for any human civilization. And in the context of our today's processes, we pay special attention to the way women are involved in shaping new agenda for peace and trust and how they promote social change. I would also like to say that Russia stands for working with international civil society organizations in terms of exchanging best practices in eliminating any kinds of violence women and children face, and we also seek to create a favorable environment for women peace builders and grassroots political and civil society activists in order to be able to work in these extreme conditions. I would like to thank the Inter-Parliamentary Union for raising this on its agenda on the role women play in sustainable development. I would like to invite all women parliamentarians to take part in the Eurasian Women's Forum in St. Petersburg in September 2024, held by the upper chamber of the Russian Parliament, the Federation Council, together with the Parliamentary Assembly of the CIS. This forum promotes dialogue and international cooperation on equal terms among women from various countries for peace, security, and development. We will have a very interesting program for you, just as every time. Invite all of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Now, Turkmenistan.
Hurmatly hanımlar, jenaplar, parlamentara birleşen 148-nji assembleýanyň çäklerine geçirilen denan Parliamentarian forum ýokary derejede gurulanyny bellemek bilen çykyş etmäne döredilme mümkinçilik üçin sag bolsunlar maýtmana ruhsat berin. Gaderli foruma gatnaşyjylar ilki bilen parlamentara birleşen Birleşen Milletler Guramasy bilen hyzmatdaşlykda gender deňligi üçin etmek hemde denanlaryň mümkinçiliklerini giňetmek boýunça
ليست لدينا الترجمة. هل هناك ترجمة بالإنجليزية؟ سأعود لك بعد حين. ليست هناك ترجمة، سأعود لك بعد حين. إذن أعطي الكلمة إلى الهند.
So we will go back to you, ma'am, since there is no interpretation into English. So we will go back to you a bit later. Thank you. Now we will give the floor to India, and after that, India, we give you the floor.
Delegates, I commend the chairperson for convening this crucial panel on women. Peace and security. India is dedicated to promoting peace, prosperity, and empowerment of women, recognizing their pivotal role in conflict resolution and post-conflict reconstruction. Despite progress in the women, peace and security agenda, women remain underrepresented in peace process and rebuilding effort. Their involvement enhances prevention and peace building effectiveness. India, proud of its history in UN peacekeeping, emphasize women's participation exemplified by our all-female in unit in Liberia and the deployment of 108 Indian women peacekeepers global, including in Sudan, Congo, and Golan Heights. Aligned with Prime Minister Modi's vision of women-led development, India champions gender equality. The recent passing of the Women's Reservation Bill underscored our commitment to empowering women in decision-making roles. We believe sustainable peace requires women's meaningful participation at all levels.
Excuse me, we ask you to conclude. Thank you.
Peace in processing, addressing gender-based violence in India contributes to a more peaceful, inclusive world. We place full commitment to implementing the UN agenda on women, peace and security, striving for a world where every woman and girl can thrive in safety
شكراً.
and equality.
شكرا.
Equality.
شكراً الهند.
Thank you.
شكرا.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Now we will give the floor to our colleague from Turkmenistan. Go ahead, we give you the floor.
Thank you. Hormatly hanım başlık, hanımlar, cenaplar, Parlamentary Birleşiğin 148-nji Assembly'sinin çäklerine geçirilen Denan Parlamentarlar Forumunun ýokary derejede gurulmalygyny bellemek bilen çykyş etmäge döredilen mümkinçiligi üçin sag bolsun aýtmagy ruhsat edin. No?
Sorry, ما في ترجمة.
Excuse us, but there is no interpretation. We will go back to you later on. Vietnam, we give the floor to our colleague from Vietnam. Go ahead.
Ladies and gentlemen, even though the UN Security Council passed the resolution 1325, the women and the children are still threatened in an increasingly complex and unsustainable security environment. They are still the most vulnerable. Gender inequality is still a barrier to women's effort to move forward. In that context, from the perspective of lawmakers, we need to pay more attention to women and children while making initiatives relating to peace and post-conflict reconstruction process, as well as relating to non-traditional security and development policies. Women should be more equipped with knowledge and skill and participate more actively in the policy-making process. Therefore, the policy will be more comprehensive, sustainable, and appropriate for women. We wish the international community will maintain political determination and concretize commitment to implementing the goal of the agenda on women, peace, and security, closely linked with the implementation of the goals in the UN 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. In 2020, Vietnam successfully organized the international conference commemorating the 20th anniversary of the implementation of the Resolution 3025 and passed the Hanoi Action Commitment, which calls on countries to build a national action program on women, peace, and security. We commit to continue these efforts and call on the international community to join hands for the development of women within the common goal of sustainable development of humanity. Thanks for listening.
Thank you. Thank you. Now I give the floor to Tanzania. Tanzania, you have the floor.
First of all, I would like to congratulate the keynote speakers and other presenters who have been contributing in this motion on advancing peace and security. I would like to add my points as follows. We can talk about advancing sustainable peace and security without mentioning the role of technology. As we have already heard from the scientists that the expected future war is between humankind and technology. And I have heard from one of the keynote speakers who has been mentioned about the security systems. I concur with her very well, but I want to add that the security systems are also nowadays attacked with cyber attacks. So it's high time also, when we want to advance peace and security, we must also take into considerations on the systems to ensure more resilient against the cyber attacks. Because nowadays, hospitals are attacked, hospital systems are attacked, and the most sufferers are women and children. So we must ensure the security systems are resilient enough against the cyber attacks. Also, I would like to add about the maritime conflicts. It's very important in ensuring security system in maritime systems, because it can escalate the risk of illegal women and children trafficking. So it's high time, when we talk about advancing peace and security, to ensure women are entering effectively in those 5 pillars of digital transformation, which is also including digital security and digital innovation. Thank you so much.
شكرا.
Thank you. Now I give the floor to the UAE. The UAE. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. At the beginning, I would like to thank you for all the valuable ideas regarding our roles as parliamentarians to support the role of women in peace and security. Women represent 50% of the population, so involving them in the process of decision making in things that affect them, such as peace and security, is very important. They should enrich these discussions by their experiences and expertise, which will add to the quality of the legislations, which in turn will affect women in particular and the world in general. In the era of conflicts, women face the dangers of violence, and their participation will give priority to these issues and will give priority to preventing them. Regarding preventing violence and promoting peace and security, we cannot ignore the importance of education to make sure that the next generation is aware and tolerant and make sure that women have a very positive influence on the opinions of their children. This is why, as parliamentarians, we play a very important legislative role in influencing educational curricula and launch awareness campaign regarding the role of women to raise a generation, a peaceful generation. In this context, I would like to shed light on our experience in the UAE, which focused mainly on empowering women in peace and security keeping under the auspice of the mother of the UAE. We launched this program in cooperation with the United Nations to increase the number of educated women in peace and security. The program trains women on peace and security. We trained over 500 women. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you very much. I give now the floor to Suriname.
Madam President, my dear colleagues, women parliamentarians are also leaders to keep moving forward. In today's world, fake news influence, deceives, inflames, divides, and weakens societies. They can easily use for personal, professional, or political gain. In politics, they are used as part of political campaigns to defeat opponents. Women are particularly vulnerable to online manipulation. This so-called intimidation and violence against women and female politicians should be completely banned, starting in parliaments of which I'm a part of. Only speaking will not be enough. Taking actions in particular cases must lead to total awareness for recognizing fake news. I am very pleased that IPU has taken the lead in this document and identified the best ways to address this phenomenon. As parliamentarians, it is our responsibility to uphold the values of human rights and international humanitarian law. We can't ignore the potential dangers of autonomous weapon systems, which have the ability to operate without direct human control or supervision. Through collaboration with governments, we can make legislation and policy shapes that align with our vision of a world free from the risks associated with autonomous weapons. We must protect human rights, international peace and security, and tackle the challenges of our time. At least, let us help with the development program for autonomous weapons and weapon systems. Become a part of the solution. Thank you.
شكرا. والآن أحيل الكلمة إلى
Thank you. Now I give the floor to France.
الكلمة فرنسا.
So France, I give you the floor.
Merci beaucoup, Madame la
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, dear colleagues. The founders of the IPU, Frédéric Passier and William Randall Kummer, are some of the first winners of the Nobel Peace Prize. And we have Alexandra Malenchuk in 2022, who received the Nobel Peace Prize in 2020, and in 2023 for work in Iran and promoting human rights and freedom for all. It is very important for our forum of women parliamentarians to speak about women's role as peace builders. Some of us are often threatened in our countries, and we have to speak for those who face violations of their rights. In the UN, we have the resolution of 1325 for women, peace and security, which says that women and girls are the first victims of violence in terms of conflict or violence or terrorism. We need to support women in these processes of reconstruction after conflicts. And as the IPU, we have the responsibility to denounce violations against women, including sexual violence, and to comply with international law. We have a law that was adopted 2 weeks ago in bringing together 25 different presidents of assembly in the French National Assembly. Our President Julia Axon also came, as did many people from around many other continents. We had presidents from Cambodia, Spain, Bangladesh, Lithuania, Malawi, Mexico, Monaco, Mozambique, Quebec, from the Czech Republic, Rwanda, from many other countries, and from Slovenia. And we have the same conviction to fight against violence against women and girls. And this is a combat that has to be won, a struggle that must be won. We have to support women and girls during and after conflicts. And in this way, humanity as a whole will progress. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And now I give the floor to Turkmenistan. Go ahead, we give you the floor.
نعتذر على هذا الخلل التقني.
We apologize for the technical difficulties.
Türkmenistan Birleşen Milletler Guramasının ve parlamentara birleşen denanların meseleleri babattaki çemeleşmelerine ve öňe sürýän başlangyçlaryna aýratyn uly hormat goýmak bilen
هل هناك ترجمة؟
Is there interpretation?
The Russian interpreter, you have the statement. Can you read it, please?
نعتذر مرة أخرى.
We apologize once more. There is no interpretation. I will go back to you. Okay, so I give you the floor. Go ahead. I believe there's interpretation, so go ahead.
Ça se branche pas. Russian не выходит.
Вот он текст, вот он.
Да.
تفضلي. الكلمة لك.
Hormatly hanımlar we jenaplar.
نعتذر على هذا الخلل سنعود لك.
We are sorry for this technical problem. We shall get back to you later on. I give the floor now to Mozambique. And then I will give you back the floor. We shall get back to you. The floor now is for Mozambique.
Madam Chair, ladies and gentlemen, the government and Mozambique, with the participation of the civil society and cooperation partners, has been implementing actions aiming at the effective participation of women and girls in enhancing peace, security, and respect for human rights, namely the rights of women and girls and their participation in peace processes. Mozambique recognizes the importance of the protagonism of women as agents of prevention and resolution of conflicts, as well as in peacekeeping efforts, and the dialogue of women can bring important inputs to strengthen the role of this social class in these processes. Resolution 1325, approved by the UN Security Council, calls countries to adopt measures for a greater participation of women in matters related to peace and security at the decision-making level, the construction of mechanisms to prevent and solve conflicts. Mozambique is one of the 107 countries that so far has approved a national action plan on women, peace, security. And we enhance the importance of taking into consideration specific needs of women and girls in the context of armed conflicts and post-conflicts. Meanwhile, we recognize that there are still many challenges to the participation of women in negotiation, peace processes, and in the resolution mechanisms of conflicts, as well as in programs for involving women and girls in post-conflict times, or in the and all NGOs should play a key role in healing wounds resulting from this situation of instability. We are talking about from our own experience, from the history we have had and the present we have in our country, namely the terrorist attacks in Cabo Delgado. We want the adoption of legal and political tools and public policies towards prevention, punishment and eradication of violence against women, not just in politics, but also across all social levels and all manifestations. Thank you for having listened to me.
Thank you. I give the floor to Mrs. Mikhailova from Azerbaijan.
From Azerbaijan, Sabina Khasayeva.
Mikhailova.
Yes, she will come back.
Yes.
Dear colleagues, the involvement of women with boundless energy and potential in the peace-building process can undoubtedly lead to more positive results. Women's natural ability to see different points of view and communicate effectively helps achieve peace faster. Women's ability for understanding diverse perspectives and strong communication skills can help them achieve positive results in this regard faster. Also, in the past, there were few opportunities for women to directly participate in the peacemaking process. They made significant contributions to this process in various ways. They played a leading role in providing humanitarian aid to those affected by conflict, support victims of violence. Additionally, they emphasized the importance of peaceful coexistence by appealing to cultural and religious values. Today, progress toward gender equality empowers women to participate more in peace-building efforts. In such circumstances, women have more chances to directly engage in peace-building process. Women's representation in social and political spheres, especially in the parliament, should be increased, allowing them opportunities to speak on significant platforms and amplify their voices to broader communities. It's unfortunate that even in today's modern world, disagreements between countries can lead to armed conflict. The people of Azerbaijan, including Azerbaijani women, have directly witnessed and suffered from the horrors of war. Therefore, Azerbaijani women are also actively contributing to the peace-building process today. Today, women alongside men try to heal the lasting scars of conflict and strive for a brighter future for future generations. We need to stress that our desire for peace goes beyond our country to include our region and the whole world. Thank you.
شكرا. والآن الكلمة كمبوديا.
I give the floor now to Cambodia.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, although we do not have yet a national action plan on women, peace and security, but Cambodia is very committed to implement the UN Security Council Resolution 1325 related to women, peace and security agenda. Cambodia achievement in line with the 4 pillars of UNSCR 1325 include the increase of women's participation in leadership position, the implementation of 3 national action plans to prevent violence against women since 2011, involving 16 line ministries, 4 development partners, and 30 NGOs. With the goal of contributing to sustain peace worldwide, since 2006, Cambodia has deployed more than 9,000 peacekeepers, including more than 800 women, to join the UN humanitarian demining and peacekeeping operation in 10 war-torn countries. Cambodia is ranked first in ASEAN and 9th out of the more than 100 countries in dispatching women to join the UN peacekeeping operations. Demining is the Cambodia Sustainable Development Goal to address the problems of landmine and explosive remnants of war. Gender is also mainstream in the Cambodia National Mine Action Strategy in order to provide better services to women, men, boys, and girls in the community. The first regional symposium on implementing women, peace, and security agenda in ASEAN was held in 2019 in Phnom Penh, Cambodia. The launch of the first regional study on women, peace, and security in ASEAN was launched during the International Women's Day in March 2021. The ASEAN Regional Plan of Action on Women, Peace, and Security was also adopted at the ASEAN Summit chaired by Cambodia in December 2022. In December last year, the launch in Cambodia of the Localization Toolkit and Guidelines for the ASEAN Regional Plan of Action on Women, Peace, and Security, with the aim at helping ASEAN member states to develop national action plans that will effectively implement the regional policy and respond to the new peace and security challenges in the region, including climate change, cybersecurity, pandemics, and extremism. Moreover, it is crucial that the Women, Peace, and Security agenda is known and understood by broader audiences to foster understanding, relevance, and positive outcomes. Despite all these key milestone challenges persist, while we believe in women's transformative roles in sustaining peace and security, a lot remains to be done to support awareness raising and targeted campaign among wider public. So I would like to conclude by expressing my deep thanks to the forum organizer for providing us the opportunity to learn from other participants. Only through dialogues and synergies that we could have a comprehensive national action plan on WPS, resulting in significant participation of women in peace building, conflict prevention, socio-economic recovery, and post-conflict resolution. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. I give the floor now to South Africa. Kindly respect the time given to you, please.
The panelists for their contribution. Honorable members, women across diverse contexts continue to bear the disproportionate burden of armed conflict. Their personal, economic, civil, and political security is persistently weakened. The 2023 report of the Secretary General on Women and Peace and Security illustrates that in several countries, women's meaningful participation as mediators, negotiators, and signatories is undermined despite repeated calls for change. Those who do participate face increasing security concerns, including weaponization of digital technologies. In this regard, as we approach the 25th anniversary of the adoption of UN Security Council Resolution 1325 next year, it is crucial for us to take into account the Secretary General's report as they provide us with useful overview of the successes and gaps in the implementation of this agenda. Particularly, despite notable progress, women continue to be underrepresented in broad-based national dialogues where inclusion should be paramount and gender parity should be achievable. Parliaments can play a critical role in reversing this situation by advocating for the enacting legislation that ensures gender parity in national dialogues and fosters the meaningful participation of women in decision-making processes, thereby fostering inclusivity and gender equality as pillars of peace and security efforts. South Africa has been a steadfast supporter of women, peace, and security agenda since its inception. In 2020, our cabinet adopted the National Action Plan on Women, Peace, and Security, providing concrete steps to support conflict resolution through the meaningful involvement of women as peacemakers at local level. Additionally, our Foreign Affairs Ministry provides training and capacity building for women and youth to participate meaningfully in peace processes at continental and local levels. Our peacekeeping continues to ensure that meaningful participation of women in peace support operations. In this regard, the South African National Defence Force comprises 20% women in combat positions, enabling this deployment in the front lines of armed conflict. As parliamentarians, we must ensure the implementation of women, peace, and security national action plans supporting legislative measures to foster gender-inclusive peace processes. Thank you, Honorable Chairperson.
شكرا. والآن أحيل الكلمة إلى
Thank you.
جيبوتي.
I give the floor now to Djibouti.
من فضلكم احترام الوقت
Kindly
دقيقتين.
respect the time given to you, only 2 minutes.
Madame la Présidente, chers collègues, chers parlementaires.
Madam President, dear colleagues, dear parliamentarians, women are often the first victims of conflict, but they are also the pillars of peace and leaders in stability and security in our society. Their voices have to be heard and their contributions recognized. This is the message that we need to bring to this assembly. In African society, women are the pillars of their families and, by extension, of society. However, during conflicts, it is women and children who are the first victims. Us, as women parliamentarians, we must engage ourselves with the implementation of the Resolution 1325 from the UN. There is a key link between the participation of women and the construction of sustainable peace. In Resolution 1325, which was adopted by the Security Council in unanimity, and that is about women, peace and security, this resolution says that we have to act to guarantee the access of women to peace, to mediation, and to reconstruction after conflict and support during conflicts. We have many inequalities, gender inequalities, and much marginalization of women. Also, the independence, economic independence of women is very important. Their participation as well. These are key elements to be able to ensure stability and sustainable peace. We know that women are often the first people to suffer the effects of conflicts as people who have to move to other areas, who are displaced, and who also suffer sexual violence. Djibouti has implemented an action plan under Resolution 1325 in terms of the representation of women in political areas, and many of the members are women. So I would say that there should be more space for women at decision-making areas. Thank you.
Thank you. I give the floor now to Laos.
Laos.
Here.
تفضلي.
The floor is now to Laos.
احترام الوقت من فضلكم. احترام الوقت دقيقتين.
Please stick to the 2 minutes granted to you. Please. Thank you.
Okay.
Kindly stick to the 2 minutes granted to you. Thank you.
Esteemed delegates, ladies and gentlemen, the Forum of 4 Women Parliamentarians under the theme Women Peace Builders Advancing Sustainable Peace convenes at a critical moment marked by complex changes that pose a significant threat to global peace and the peaceful coexistence for worldwide. Against this backdrop, the role of women and participation of the great importance. Beyond being mere caretakers of families, women involvement extends deeply into social economic development and sustainable peace building process, addressing disputes and conflicts through peaceful means, including through dialogues and negotiations. As a country profoundly affected by the decades-long war instigated by foreign aggressors, our people, particularly women, bear the direct second consequence of war, such as unexploited urban UXO. Consequently, the law PDR made the clearance of UXO a priority in integrating into our national sustainable development goals as a goal number 18, save lives from UXO, endorsed by the United Nations. The removal of UXO requiring sustainable funding and a near century-long commitment is vital for ensuring the safety and livelihood of our people, particularly women in the remote areas engaged in production activities. Therefore, addressing USO is essential for ensuring that the women in the Lao PDR can live safely and peacefully. Honorable Chairperson, I would like to take this opportunity to call upon members of the IPU to foster environment for
Please conclude.
wider and comprehensive participation in the negotiation processes so to address existing challenges and promote sustainable peace regionally and globally. Thank you very much.
شكرا. والآن أحيل الكلمة إلى أوزبكستان.
Thank you. I give the floor now to Uzbekistan.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Kindly stick to your 2 minutes.
Dear guests, the theme of this session is very topical in today's turbulent international environment. Recognizing this creative role of women and decision-making processes towards achieving peace, security, and sustainable development, Uzbekistan was among the first countries to support UN Security Council Resolution 1325. Last year, we adopted a new constitution and the development strategy Uzbekistan 2030, which are in line with the UN SDGs in all areas. The country is implementing ensuring gender equality is among the main priorities of our country's state policy. The country is implementing measures to involve women in decision-making processes at all levels. Today, women account for 32% of the parliament of Uzbekistan. A recently adopted law stipulates that when nominated, the number of women from political parties must account for at least 40% of candidates. I would like to draw your attention to another relevant problem: the reintegration back into society of persons who have previously been exposed to extremist ideas. This issue is at the core of Uzbek government's attention. As a result of the personal efforts of President Uzbekistan, we have returned our women and children from conflict zones in the Middle East and Afghanistan. The women's community of Uzbekistan actively engaged in rendering them social and psychological assistance. It's encouraging to note that absolutely all the repatriates returned to their motherland have embarked upon a new life and joined our community as full-fledged members. As you know, the Central Asian region borders Afghanistan, where the well-known events took place. Uzbekistan, like the rest of the countries of the region, is interested in a speedy settlement of issues related to the well-being of the Afghan people. Our country continues to provide humanitarian aid through the logistics hub and train Afghan citizens at the educational center in the city of Termez. Uzbekistan remains committed to the fulfillment by the interim government of Afghanistan of the international community's demands, the formation of an inclusive government, respect for the rights of women and girls to work and obtain education. In this respect, we support the early unfreezing of Afghanistan Central Bank's financial assets abroad. And, it's encouraging that the issues of security and peace reflected in Resolution 1325 are supported not only in Uzbekistan, but also in the regional platform Dialogue of Women Leaders of Central Asia, created on our initiative. In a short time, the dialogue has become an efficient platform for promoting gender equality and supporting women in the region. Our women are always willing and able to contribute to peace-building processes at both national and international levels. Thank you for your attention.
I give the floor now to Turkmenistan. The floor is yours.
Госпожа председатель, дамы и господа, проявляя особое уважение к подходу и выдвигаемым инициативам Межпарламентского союза и Организации Объединенных Наций по вопросам женщин, Туркменистан последовательно реализует социально ориентированную и эффективную гендерную политику. Правовую основу...
Show special respect for the approach and the initiatives forwarded by the Inter-Parliamentary Union and the United Nations. Turkmenistan consistently implements a socially oriented and effective gender policy. The legal basis for the activity is the Constitution of our country, which guarantees the social security of every person, as well as equal rights and freedoms for men and women, equal opportunities for their implementation. The policy of our country pursued in the area under the leadership of the President of Turkmenistan, respected Serdar Berdimuhamedov, expands opportunities for increasing the social, economic, and labor activity of women. As a result, women of Turkmenistan, in accordance with their abilities and professional training, are widely represented in the executive, judicial bodies of government, existing political parties, as well as the national economic complex of the country, actively participate in managing the affairs of society and the state, and are engaged in entrepreneurship. Our country is implementing the National Action Plan to ensure gender equality in Turkmenistan for 2021-25. As you know, in December 2020, with the support of the United Nations, the Women's Dialogue of Central Asian countries was created. Turkmenistan chaired the Women's Dialogue of Central Asian countries in 2022. Our country, with the framework of this organization, successfully interacts with international organizations and participating countries in various areas, ensuring gender equality, peaceful and sustainable development, environmental protection, supporting women's entrepreneurship, improving the social protection of women at the levels of state policy and legislation. Currently, Turkmenistan is a member of the Executive Board of the United Nations Entity for Gender Equality and the Empowerment of Women, UN Women 22-24. Dear ladies and gentlemen, ensuring gender development and empowering all women and girls is one of the Sustainable Development Goals. Turkmenistan, recognizing the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, has acceded to the main international document in this area, including international documents of women's rights. I would like to note that in the future, by actively participating in activities to ensure gender equality, the creative work of women in various fields and the previous of social benefits, we're always ready to cooperate in this declaration. Wish to all participants of the representative forum success in their ongoing activities to ensure gender equality. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you. I give the floor now to Zambia.
Слово предоставляется Замбии. Спасибо большое за предоставленное нам слово. Мы хотели бы отметить прежде всего, что женщины стоят в первом ряду тех, кто заботится о мире, безопасности, кто принимает на себя соответствующие удары и принимает вызовы. Мы считаем, что традиционный подход гендерный не может быть применен по-прежнему традиционно. Женщины участвуют в миростроительном процессе, в создании новых систем безопасности, превентивных мерах. Женщины очень часто оказываются жертвами гендерного насилия, и они участвуют одновременно в политиках по созданию политики безопасности, по созданию условий прочного мира. Мы имеем соответствующий механизм оценки участия женщин в такого рода механизмах, и мы Считаем, что как можно больше женщин должны быть привлечены к законодательной деятельности для того, чтобы правительства должным образом способствовали расширению вариантов участия женщин в миростроительстве. Мы считаем, что есть уникальные позиции для женщин, в частности, в парламентах, и мы постоянно держим эти моменты в центре внимания МПС. Задействование женщин в решении гендерных вопросов, конечно же, ведет к упрочению мира и в обеспечению его долгосрочности. Большое спасибо за внимание.
شكرا. والآن أحيل الكلمة إلى
Thank you. I give the floor now to Chile. The floor is yours. Chile.
Madam Chair, I'd like to greet you and to all my parliamentary colleagues. I remind you that the resolution 1324 of the United Nations has a marked path for the protection of women during armed conflicts, and so the impact on their lives and promoting their participation, their active participation. That's why it's necessary to use the voice of women in negotiations with the states, nations, people. They must be at the table to dialogue, to sign the agreements and the planification after the conflict. And they have to be capacitated and strengthened in order to carry out the process from a gender perspective. The survivor needs our support. In Chile, we have mixed experiences. On the one hand, we have the Central Territory, where there is a constant military presence, and empower the women in Mapucho to be able to develop protection networks. But we also have the sad figure of 20,000 children who have been kidnapped and that were taken away to be given away as to be adopted in the United States and in Europe. And so we want accountability and we want reparation and we want to protect women who suffer this. We need to make a commitment to protect civil women against this armed conflict without and we won't allow women to be victims of war. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Now I give the floor to Thailand. Thailand, I give you the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I wish to start by sharing with you some example of Thailand experience in supporting women peace and security agenda. Ensuring women peace and security is a cross-cutting issue that may require action by a number of sectors, including the military, police force, human rights, education, economic developments, religious affairs, and peace building. In the Thai Parliament, these sectors will be dealt with by different parliamentary committees, meaning that each committee has a right to inquire into aspects of the WPS agenda that related to their mandate. Another significant driving force to implement the WPS agenda is money. Within their budgetary mandate, but parliamentarians can make sure that adequate funding allocated to peace process to every state agency or even support relevant civil society organization. It is also critical for MP to play a role in budgetary oversight through a cross-sector approach to find out whether the services promised by the government were actually delivered. Women have an important role to play in a conflict prevention. The UN Security Council Resolution 1325 acknowledged that armed conflicts impact women, and recognize the role and contribution of women in peace making and peace building, as well as fundamental rights to be included in the peace process. Sustainable peace cannot be built when the rights of women is ignored.
شكراً.
So transformation chart is needed to protect women's rights to ensure gender equality in order to build and sustainable peace. These include women empowerment through enhanced participation in politics, the economy, and all phases of society. Thank you so much.
شكراً.
Thank you. Thank you for respecting the time. Now I give the floor to Romania.
Madam Chairperson, dear colleagues, the Women, Peace and Security Agenda is a key dimension of the new Agenda for Peace proposed by the UN Secretary General in view of the upcoming Summit of the Future. Romania has a national strategy aimed at mainstreaming gender in all defense and security policies and increasing women participation in peace negotiations. Romanian women participate in international field missions deployed by the UN, NATO, OSCE, and the European Union. They have a key role in addressing the needs of local communities, in the dialogue with women in the host countries, and in understanding the challenges of everyday life of families and vulnerable groups. Dear colleague, last year Romania co-chaired the Global Network of National Focal Points for Women, Peace and Security, a cross-regional forum in which 90 countries and several international organizations work together to bridge the gap between policy and practice in implementing the UN Security Council resolutions and improve the coordination of funding and assistance programs. The members of our Parliamentary Human Rights and Defense Committees were partners, hosted and contributed to the activities of the network, providing strong parliamentary support to the Romanian chairmanship. We focused in this context on women in cybersecurity, a topic increasingly important in today's security landscape. In conclusion, based on our experience, we recommend a close interaction of women parliamentarians and parliamentary specialized bodies with the national focal points for women, peace and security. And in countries where such focal points do not exist yet, parliaments might consider promoting their creation. Thank you very much for your attention.
شكراً. شكراً على
Thank you. Thank you for respecting the time. Now I will give the floor to Bahrain. Thank you very much, Madam President. Women's participation in building peace face a lot of cultural, political, and social obstacles, as well as the dangers that women face in restoring peace and keeping it, include getting to a leadership position and participating in decision making because of bias and sexism. Furthermore, when women try to participate in political debates, they face threats. Thirdly, there's a lack of awareness of the importance of women participating in peacekeeping decisions. Thirdly, fourthly, there are a lot of political obstacles facing women and to participate in political life. Fifth, women lack the resources to participate in these processes. This is why facing these obstacles requires a constant effort to make sure that women participate in peacekeeping and reconciliation. To make sure that women are involved in these decisions, parliamentarians can take several steps, including adopting legislations and policies that protect women in conflict areas, such as legislation on domestic violence and protecting women legally, including amendments in legislations, including a mechanism that promote women's participation in decision making, as well as dedicating legal and financial means to empower women peace builders, including logistic and educational training, as well as promoting dialogue between women and men in the parliament in terms of peace and security, promoting the role of women. In conclusion, promoting transparency in decision making, including giving women equitable opportunities and participating in parliaments. Thank you very much. Yes, thank you. Thank you. Now we give the floor to Syria. Thank you. Women try very hard to prove themselves, and they are negatively impacted and marginalized since their birth. Since the beginning of the war in Syria, women have been trying to get to a peaceful resolution, and they also occupied leadership positions in Syria. They provided very important assistance to establish peace, and the resolution 1325 put the agenda for women, peace and security. It included 9 resolutions and decisions that shed the light on the importance of women's participation to preventing war and conflicts, as well as sexual violence. During the war, women in Syria made sure that they promote the resolution and the policy of the parliament in 2016 to make sure, or to give women a quota of 30% in parliament, and we made sure to include a language that takes into account a gender perspective. In 2015, 19 Syrian women spoke in front of the Security Council, and their role is very important in the social aspect. They also spoke in front of the Special Rapporteur to find a settlement. Thank you. Thank you for keeping the time. And now I give the floor to Sweden.
لكم الكلمة. Thank you, Madam
Sweden,
Chair.
we give you the floor.
Delegates, ladies and gentlemen, first I would like to thank the panel for their introduction. I think today's topic is very important. We live in a world where there is an increased insecurity, instability. If we should have long-lasting peace, as have been said here before, we need also to involve women in peace building on all stages. But it's not only about involving women. I must say that we need to work very firmly, very constructive. We should not only talk any longer. There need to be plans, there need to be statistics, there need to be a change of traditions, customs, because women have to take place in the peace building work. And let me say one more thing. I think it's very important with the status of women. We could see today that young women are in a majority at a lot of universities when it comes to prestige education, like medicine, technology, law, economy. But don't let us forget women who work with traditional occupation, like nurses, like teachers. I say this because if we should have an increased number of women at the peace building table, we need also to look up on women as capable women, people who can contribute from their position. And if we should have long-lasting peace, there need to be women, because women and men have different experience, and both genders' experience are needed. Thank you very much, Madam.
شكرا.
Thank you. Thank you for respecting the time. Now I give the floor to Mombia. excuse me, Gambia. I give the floor to Gambia. Gambia, I give you the floor.
Madam Chair, and first I'll say congratulations. I also use this opportunity to congratulate the IPU President, Madam Tulia, for being the President of the Inter-Parliamentary Union. And having said that, Honorable Madam Speaker, on the theme, which is the advancement of peace and security for women, I think this is a very important topic. It is very important that in all peace buildings that excludes women, then there will be no peace. Of course, there'll be peace, but very, very limited. So once we try to increase peace within our countries, within the region, we need to include women as peace builders as well. Madam Speaker, I try to concur with the representative from Tanzania on the cybersecurity. The woman from Tanzania on the cybersecurity, which Gambia had just passed a bill, and hopefully will also pass a bill on cybercrime to control cybercrimes within our region, and particularly the Gambia. And also, there is a bill also currently, and which is also trying to build peace in women's sector, which is also the Women's Amendment Bill. There's an amendment bill which has been brought to the Parliament by a parliamentarian on the women's circumcision, and which is already a law in the Gambia, which has been enacted. A Women's Act has already been enacted in the Parliament of the Gambia, which was 2010 and amended in 2015. But a parliamentarian brought a bill in the Parliament of the Gambia to amend the bill on this women circumcision, which last session, the parliamentarians of the Gambia have already looked at this, and then we have now referred to the Gender Committee, which is now a stand-alone committee to maintain peace within women. Gender Committee has been in partnership with the Health Committee in the Parliament of the Gambia, but now it is a stand-alone committee, and which the bill has been referred to that particular committee and the Health Committee to scrutinize it and look at it very well to maintain peace within the women's sector, which a high delegation of people within the Gambia has come out to demonstrate on their rights. As they said, they felt is their right, but then the Gender Committee and the Health Committee is also looking at it very well to make sure that peace will be maintained in the Gambia, and of course to do justice to the women of the Gambia. And having said that also, Honorable Speaker or Madam Speaker, and the UN and the UNDP, UN Women and UNDP is in collaboration with the Parliament of the Gambia to support parliamentarians on gender equality. And thanks to the UN Women and UNDP for that. And also with the budget, it has also been inclusive in our budgets several years, and that special protection, disability and rehabilitation, social welfare is also part of our budget. On that note, thank you very much.
شكرا جزيلا.
Thank you very much. Now I give the floor to Egypt. Aida, I give you the floor. Thank you very much, Madam Chairperson. Ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, it is our responsibility as parliamentarians to adopt laws and legislations that enable women to manage and prevent conflicts and crises. A better future relies on adjusting this power, this lack of balance in the power, and women have the right to make decisions that affect their future, a future that is based on parity, a future that is inclusive of everybody. This is why we need to encourage the involvement of women in the political life and national governance, as well as peace processes, guaranteeing their participation in peace negotiations, national reconciliations, and the efforts for rebuilding post-conflicts. National legislations are needed to guarantee the participation of women in high responsibility positions. We need to abolish all laws that discriminate against women and to eradicate sexism. This is why Egypt gives great importance for women, peace and security agenda and promotes their participation in negotiations and to contribute in a valuable way in different stages. Egypt is one of the top 10 countries that participate in peacekeeping United Nations operations and missions, and we participate in the CEDAW as well. The Ministry of Interior makes sure that all peacekeeping soldiers get trained regarding women empowerment and gender equality. And we make sure to include equality between women and men in all military curriculum and in all peacekeeping curriculum. Our president, Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, was one of the first presidents that joined in 2017 the United Nations Secretary General Leadership Initiative to put an end to sexual violence in the United Nations. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for respecting the time. And now I give the floor. So now I give the floor to Britain, to the UK.
Thank you. As one of the older parliamentarians here today, I can say that I remember the end of World War II. I also remember the end of the Cold War and how we rejoiced at the thought of a peaceful future. But look at the world today, we have regressed. As parliamentarians, we're privileged to have a public role and means to influence. And I believe in particular, at this time, we need to draw attention to and to support women peace builders in nations in conflict. In more general terms, I echo what was said by one of our colleagues this morning, that women must have a place around the table when decisions are made. And of course, we must make decisions now, and especially support Goal 16 of the United Nations SDGs. But we must also look to the future and the need for young people to recognize the importance of sustainability as well as of diversity. And in this, education is vital. And women parliamentarians have a huge role in ensuring this. Finally, whatever we do, it must be at international level. So the IPU does have a very valuable role in this. And I believe that today's discussion is vital in finding solutions which we can take back to our national parliaments and ensure implementation in accordance with the WPS plan, which Adriana Quiñones outlined so clearly earlier. We must see deeds as well as words. Thank you.
شكرا.
Thank you. And now I give the floor to the Seychelles. And please keep to the time.
Especially from Seychelles. Thank you for giving us to add an input to this debate. Seychelles is a very small island in the Indian Ocean. We may be small, but we get impact with all the conflicts that may happen around the world. But for our little country, we still have our work to do and input to do with regards to peace and security for the country. The Women Parliamentary Caucus of the National Assembly of Seychelles is frequently engaging with peacemakers from non-government organizations to show support and commitments in advocating women empowerment, gender-sensitive matters, and the constant issues surrounding gender-based violence in Seychelles. After viewing and listening to all the information shared today with us through the forum, and all the intervention made by strong women leaders today, I have no doubt that my colleagues back home can do much more to support other women peace builders that has not yet engaged with our parliament, and see how best the National Assembly of Seychelles can support them and become more vigilant and valued for their work in leading sustainable peace to the people of Seychelles, especially for the vulnerable groups. Furthermore, we do acknowledge and recognize the effort of the 11 registered peace builders that are advocating for importance of having women peace builders, and including the six associations who are providing support to the victims of gender-based violence in the Seychelles. Last but not least, I must acknowledge that the Seychelles Parliament can generally provide more support to these peace builders groups. They need support to engage and appreciate their development efforts. Through this, we could also establish partnership, government to continue to support them programs.
We ask you to conclude.
Strengthening our parliaments and judiciary. And I thank you for listening.
شكرا.
Thank you. Thank you. Now I give the floor to Timor-Leste.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you to all speakers for sharing us information about women peace builders and promoting sustainable peace. Resolution 1325 of the UN Security Council on Women, Peace and Security. East Timor, or Timor-Leste, as a post-conflict country, has adopted this resolution, acknowledging the important contribution of women to promote peace and sustainable development throughout its history. Timor-Leste was the third country in East Asia, Southeast Asia, to develop a national plan for women, peace and security in the first stage that started already in 2016 to 2020. During this first execution stage, in cooperation with the UN Organization for Women, UN Women, and the government and civil society, implemented the first stage of the action plan for 1325 in order to enhance the participation and leadership of women in decisions, protecting against violence and promoting conflict resolution practices and peace building actions sensitive to gender. Thus, on the second stage of the 1325 resolution, we want to promote full participation and leadership, full and equal and significant participation in peace and prevention and resolution of conflicts, in humanitarian response and to disasters, in order also to expand the role of women in the decision-making in areas of security, justice, and at all levels of governance. Now, thanks to these progresses, Timor-Leste represents 33.8% of women in the parliament, the largest share of women in Southeast Asia parliaments. And I would like to encourage the IPU member countries to adopt their own national action plans in order to promote and guarantee the participation of leadership of women in decision-making levels to promote sustainable peace. Thank you for your attention.
Now I give the floor to Lesotho.
Thank you, Your Excellency, Madam Chair. I appreciate the informative presentations and the video on peacekeeping by women around the world as presented earlier on. Granted, we have specific roles of parliaments to make enabling laws for peacekeeping, to allocate budget with a gender peacekeeping lens, to play an oversight role with the peaceful nations in mind, and to influence policy towards implementation of commitments. We're also representatives of our people, while appreciating that we get a sense of urgency to encourage peacekeeping mechanisms, for example, on development of national action plans towards women, peace and security agenda. Having female MPs in the election observation missions, for example, help. As MPs, some of us, as presiding officers, we are leaders in our own right. And we need to be seen to be hands-on in our countries, leading the masses in peacekeeping or interacting with those in peacekeeping towards empowering them in their inventions. Now, as a take-home, I had a question for Mr. Greminger from the Geneva Center for Security Policy. The question was what the center really is doing to equally give attention to the emerging sense of insecurity in young men vis-a-vis the support it's already given to women in humanitarian response. This is a challenge that I think we're getting confronted with in my country, in Lesotho. And to both UN Women and to the Geneva Center for Security Policy, I'd like to get a sense of how we assembled here further the objectives of your organizations and as such advance the work of us as women and as leaders in peacekeeping. How is your interaction able to translate into results? Do MPs here individually or parliaments as bodies led by presiding officers or the governments through the line ministries or the assembly as IPU interact with you for the country initiatives? Those are the two questions. Thank you.
شكرا والآن
Thank
الكلمة
you. Now I give the floor to Iran.
رحیم همکاران گرامی، اکنون اهمیت نقش زنان در سطوح مختلف ملی و بین‌المللی برای گسترش صلح و امنیت جهانی به وضوح شناخته شده است و به جرئت میتوان گفت که این حضور پررنگ زنان نه فقط به عنوان یک عامل تاثیرگذار بلکه یک عامل تعیین کننده محسوب می‌شود.
There's no interpretation.
The role of women at different national and international levels for the expansion of the world peace and security is clearly known. We can now boldly assert that this strong presence of women is considered not only as an influential factor, but also as a determining factor, which in many cases, the success and main progress of affairs directly depends on it. Today's world needs more than ever the unique activity and dynamism of women based on their special capacities and abilities to save from various crises, including conflicts.
جمهوری اسلامی ایران پایبند به الگوی ناظر بر حضور زنان در سه عرصه تکامل فردی، حیات اجتماعی و کانون خانواده است و در هر سه سطح برای احقاق حقوق و ارتقاء وضعیت آنان تلاش می‌کند. در این راستا در عین قائل بودن به فرصت‌های برابر برای زنان و مردان به فراخور تفاوت‌های جسمی و روحی بانوان که نیازمند توجه ویژه است، حمایت‌های خاصی را برای آنها در نظر می‌گیرد. با استفاده از این راهبرد توانایی زنان برای گسترش ثبات اجتماعی که همانا ایجاد کننده صلح و امنیت است به دست می‌آید. زنان ایران همواره با استفاده از این الگوگام‌های بلندی برای ثبات اجتماعی برداشته‌اند.
The Islamic Republic of Iran believes in and adheres to the model of women's presence in the three areas of personal development, social life, and the pivot of the family, and strives to achieve the rights and improve their status at all three levels. In this regard, while considering equal opportunities for women and men, it provides special protection for women, taking into account the physical and mental differences of women that requires special attention. By employing this strategy, women's ability to expand social stability, which actually creates peace and security, is secured. Iranian women have always taken great steps for social stability by using this model.
کشتار زنان مظلوم غزه توسط رژیم صهیونیستی هر گونه دورنما برای حضور پررنگ زنان در تأمین صلح و امنیت بین‌المللی را کمرنگ می‌سازد. مادرانی که وظیفه تربیت نسل‌های آینده فلسطین را دارند، همکنون دست جمعی و بیرحمانه هدف نسل‌کشی رژیم صهیونیستی قرار می‌گیرند. آنها بر گردن یکایک ما حق دارند تا حداقل در تمام مجامع بین‌المللی صدای آنها باشیم و حقوق پایمال شده آنان را با تمام توان مطالبه کنیم. این یک وظیفه بزرگ برای احقاق حقوق همه زنان در تمام نقاط دنیا و نقش بی‌بدیل آنها در آینده نسل‌ها است. نادیده انگاشتن جنایت در حق زنان فلسطینی لکه ننگ بزرگی در تاریخ دفاع از حقوق بشر خواهد بود که آثار و پیامدهای منفی آن
آثار و پیامدهای منفی آن گریبانگیر تمام ملت‌ها را خواهد گرفت.
The killing of the oppressed women of Gaza by the Zionist regime dims any prospect for women's prominent presence in ensuring international peace and security. Mothers who have the task of raising the future generations of Palestine are now collectively and mercilessly targeted in the genocidal campaign of the Zionist regime. All of us have a debt to be their voice, at least in all international forums, and demand their trampled rights with all our might. This is a great task for realizing the rights of all women in all parts of the world and their irreplaceable role in future generations. Ignoring the crime against Palestinian women will be a great stain in the records of human rights defense, the consequences of which will haunt all nations.
دستیابی به صلح و امنیت بین‌المللی با مشارکت عادلانه و به دور از تبعیض تمامی زنان کشورهای جهان امکان پذیر است. هر گونه ایجاد مانع در برابر دستیابی به حقوق زنان با اقدامات یکجانبه، قهری و غیرقانونی شامل تحریم‌های دارو و وسایل درمانی، ایجاد مانع در برابر انتقال فناوری‌های آموزشی جهت تحصیل و کسب مهارت برای تمامی اقشار از جمله زنان، از جمله مواردی است که موجب می‌شود زنان در کشورهای در حال توسعه با چالش مواجه شوند. این اقدامات غیرقانونی بایستی هر چه زودتر به نفع آینده‌ای باثبات و پرامید برای زنان برطرف گردند. با تشکر.
Achieving international peace and security is possible with fair and non-discriminatory participation of all women in the world. Any obstacle to the achievement of the women's rights with unilateral, coercive, and illegal measures, including sanctions on medicines and medical equipment, creating obstacle to their transfer of educational technologies for education and skill acquisition for all walks of the society, including women, are among the cases that bring challenges to women in developing countries. These illegal measures should be removed as soon as possible for the benefit of a stable and hopeful future for women. Thank you so much.
شكرا. والآن أحيل الكلمة إلى أذربيجان.
Thank you. I give the floor now to Azerbaijan.
Dear Madam Chairperson, dear colleagues, progress in gender equality agenda that was recorded in 2023 is encouraging, although the figure is low. As more women are involved in decision-making processes and different levels of governance, as more positive implication we will have. We assume that the role of women who are mostly affected in complex situations is incredible in peace-building processes. This soft power can become a strong tool in eliminating the tragic impacts of conflicts and war. As we are debating about the increase of the role of women in sustainable peace-building processes, we are recording huge number of victims among women in bloody acts committed in different parts of the world. Unfortunately, peace and security remains to be a vulnerable issue worldwide. Wars, bloody conflict, clashes leave many victims, thus damaging the societies. Azerbaijan was not the first and unfortunately the last country suffering from the evil of terror, conflict and wars. We well understand and feel what is that. Now, Azerbaijani women are very active in the mining processes that Azerbaijan suffers after war. Yesterday, we heard horrifying news about terror attacks on Crocus City Hall in Moscow, the heinous crime that killed 130 and injured more than 130 people, with many of them being women and children. This is tragedy. We call on the international community to interact to overcome such crimes. Terror has no face and no color. It has no nationality. It has no border. We all, women parliamentarians, need to unite and voice our loud voice for the sake of security of mankind and overcome the challenge that is obvious in current situations. Thank you for your attention.
شكرا. شكرا على احترام الوقت.
Thank you for having respected the time given to you. I give the floor now to parliamentarians or BNND, parliamentarians for the non-proliferation of weapons.
For bringing this very important topic to us. Whenever I speak for parliamentarians for nuclear non-proliferation and disarmament, I bring with me this pink folded paper crane, which young woman peace builders from Japan brought to us, to Switzerland, as to everywhere in the world. This is the peace messenger, which goes back to the atomic bomb on Hiroshima in 1945. And some of you remember then peace builder, 4-year young girl of Japan who survived the atomic bomb, folded 1,000 of those paper cranes with the hope that she would not die of the consequences of the radiation of the bomb. Later on, she died of cancer. So if we take this symbol seriously, dear colleagues, we should stop production of any nuclear arms today. Therefore, and as I'm speaking on behalf of Parliamentarians for Nuclear Non-Proliferation and Disarmament, I must highlight that there is an online parliamentary handbook on disarmament published by PNND and IPU. You'll find it on the website, which addresses the use of force in cyberspace. This online parliamentary handbook contains a section on disarmament for future generations, which addresses emerging, which addresses
Kindly conclude the SAP.
that could imperil the security of future generations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
شكرا. والآن
Thank you.
البرلمان العربي تفضل.
I give the floor now to the Arab Parliament.
شكرا. احترام الوقت من فضلكم. شكرا.
Kindly respect the time given to you.
السيدات
In the name
والسادة.
of God, the merciful, the Almighty, ladies and gentlemen, August Assembly, may peace be upon you. I have the pleasure to express my pleasure to take part in this very important discussion while representing the Arab Parliament. In fact, women have a greater capacity to build peace together with her partner, the man, and she can take part into the negotiation table. And this was confirmed by Resolution 1325 that was issued in 2000, and it has acknowledged the role of women in conflict resolution and in peace building. Unfortunately, the UN data mentions that most of the peace agreements after the war are not being respected. They were made to respond to the needs of women post-conflict, and this is something that should be respected. Women should have equal opportunities to represent their countries in all the international fora about the issues of peace. The historical experiences and expertise confirm that women are at the forefront of those who fall victims of war and wars and conflicts. Why not? Since we are facing the experience of Palestinian women ever since the aggression by the Israelis has started. We are seeing how more than 32,000 civilians have died, and the number of women out of those are 9,220 victims, and the number may increase because of the barbaric genocide by the Israeli occupation. This is why I would like to seize the opportunity of this meeting to salute and to pay tribute to the Palestinian women. And I hope that out of this meeting, we shall be having a special statement to condemn what the Palestinian people are subject to. And I mean by that, the collective genocide, especially against the women, the Palestinian women who are subject to genocides and atrocities. Thank you so much for your kind attention. Peace be upon you. Thank you. PMNCH, so the last speaker, the International Coalition for the Health of Women, Children and Teenagers. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to present PMNCH perspectives on these issues. It's a partnership for maternal, newborn, and child health. One thing that has not been addressed here that I would like to speak to. we must act decisively to support essential women, children, and adolescent health interventions during conflicts, focusing on strengthening gender-responsive primary healthcare systems to safeguard the most vulnerable and ensure they are resilient to future crises and health emergencies in all contexts. It is also crucial to invest in and secure food and nutrition for women, children, and adolescent health. The second point that I would like to bring here is on participation. We need to promote and secure the inclusion and women's meaningful participation in all peacemaking and peace-building efforts. To do this, we must amplify good practices and stories of women peace builders. We heard one earlier today, highlighting their impact at community level and advocate for the inclusion of women in informal peace-building procedures as a necessity for long-term inclusive success. Our actions must also be gender transformative, incorporate gender-sensitive analysis to root causes and structural drivers of conflict within risk analysis to ensure that humanitarian development and peace actions are undertaken in gender-sensitive ways, thus addressing gender inequalities and discrimination as major drivers of vulnerabilities. Thirdly, on women's participation in electoral and political processes. We need to implement strategies in partnership with various stakeholders that consider the distinct need of women and other vulnerable populations in relations to electoral procedures, registration, polling, outreach methods, and differing literacy levels. We also have to ensure the enforcement of nomination rules regarding the number of women candidates and ensure enforcement of campaign finance rules regarding gender equality. I'd just like to finish by saying that it's essential to accelerate prioritization, financing, and implementation of comprehensive sexual reproductive health in emergency response plans and national UHC plans. Thank you.
شكرا جزيلا. شكرا.
Thank you.
أشكركم جميعا على مساهمتكم القيمة.
Thank you all for your kind contributions. Thank you for the experiences that you've shared during this session. And I think that we shall be having new ideas out of this forum on how the parliamentarians could contribute in the WPS agenda, especially through unifying efforts with all women working on peace building in their countries and in the countries where conflicts are taking place. We shall move now to item number 5. I will give the floor to the colleagues to listen to the report on the draft resolution. I would like to invite Mrs. Reynolds, member of the Bureau of Women Parliamentarians from Australia and the special rapporteur of this morning's debate, to join me on the podium.
أهلا بك مرة أخرى السيدة.
Welcome once again, Ms. Reynolds. I give you the floor.
I'm pleased to report on our debate of the draft resolution this morning entitled Addressing the Social and Humanitarian Impact of Autonomous Weapons Systems and Artificial Intelligence, presented by the Standing Committee on Peace and International Security. Ms. Nassef Ayoub from Egypt chaired our debate, and 21 delegates took the floor to share their views on this topic from a gender perspective. And I thank all of you for your rich and interesting contributions. The discussions highlighted our concerns and fears about lethal autonomous weapons systems that could lead a world where weapons can kill people without any human intervention, based solely on algorithms. It's a little disappointing that very little consideration has yet been given to existing biases, including gender bias, which are now very well known. We also discussed the fact that today women and children are still disproportionately impacted by armed conflict and the use of autonomous weapon systems, which can now further exacerbate their vulnerability. We said that we were concerned that gender norms and biases against both men and women are already embedded in AI algorithms, and this can aggravate existing gender inequalities. We also agreed that as parliamentarians, we must act now so that we eliminate these biases from the outset in the data entry and also algorithms of all AI systems, including, as we discussed, for military systems. We urgently need women actively involved in the development of AI, and we need to ensure women's meaningful participation in decision-making processes relating to the development, regulation, and also the use of lethal autonomous weapon systems. We also discussed, and many of you said, that the challenge is very significant, with only 8% of software professionals being women. And women remain a minuscule fraction of the military forces in the majority of nations. So to achieve this, we need to rethink our education systems and change and challenge the gender norms that keep girls away from science and technology, so that more girls study and then go into the profession. So we agreed that as parliamentarians, we must adopt legislation and policies to regulate military AI systems and also lethal weapons to eliminate gender bias. We must also adopt comprehensive and cultural specific approaches on gender to ensure that gender sensitivity training is embedded in all AI algorithms and data sets. We've called for a ban on the development of autonomous weapon systems that would run counter to international humanitarian law and the protection of human rights and also human dignity. We recommend that our states work together to conclude a legal instrument to prohibit the production and use of these lethal autonomous weapon systems. We also emphasise the need for meaningful participation of women in peace processes, in peacekeeping, in peacebuilding, and also in security efforts, and to provide a greater prevention for women being used as weapons of war. Colleagues, in conclusion, the draft resolution presented by the co-rapporteurs of the Standing Committee on Peace and International Security already covers some of the concerns we have expressed here today, including the adoption of measures to ensure a gender and intersectional perspective based on the UN Security Council Resolution 1325 in discussion of laws and military strategies. But we must ensure that this gender perspective remains in the resolution that is to be adopted. And I can particularly thank colleagues who provided some very excellent input, and that particularly from our colleague from South Africa. Thank you. We will also consolidate it further and prepare on the basis of the main points of our discussion stronger and more comprehensive gender-related amendments to be submitted by the Forum of Women Parliamentarians to the Standing Committee on Peace and International Security. I thank you all for your input, and I thank you for your attention this afternoon. Thank you.
شكرا لك السيدة رونالدز.
Thank you, Ms. Reynolds. You have done an excellent job summarizing the very useful recommendations from the discussion. I now invite the forum to adopt the report of the rapporteur, and we will be drafting some amendments to the resolution to be presented to the Standing Committee.
شكرا. أعتبر أنه اعتمد.
Thank you. I consider the report as being adopted. Thank you all. Item number 6, which is the election of the female members. Dear colleagues, we shall move to item number 6. So the Forum of Women Parliamentarians are called to fill the vacant posts in the Bureau of Women Parliamentarians. I would like to ask the Secretary of the Forum to inform us about the names presented by the geopolitical groups in the IPU. Zaina, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam President. The forum is required to fill 2 vacant seats on the Bureau of Women Parliamentarians for one regional representative for the African group with an end of term March 2025 to replace Ms. Bougela from Eswatini, who is no longer a member of parliament. The forum is also called upon to replace another representative from the Arab group with an end of term March 2027 to replace Ms. Ramadan from Kuwait due to the fact that the Kuwaiti parliament was dissolved on 15 February 2024. The IPU Secretariat, Madam President, has received 1 candidature from the African geopolitical group to replace Ms. Bougela from Eswatini with an end of term March 2025. The candidate is Ms. Zanele Mashaba from Eswatini. And we have not received any candidature from the Arab regional group, so this vacancy to replace Ms. Ramadan from Kuwait will remain open. Wujilla? No. Only 1. Wait, no, 2. Madam, only 1. Madam Zanele Mashaba, c'est OK. Wujilla? La Bougela, elle est sortie. Ah, donc à la place, donc c'est Zanele Mashaba.
شكرا زينة على هذه التوضيحات.
Thank you, Zena, for these clarifications. Dear colleagues, we are proceeding to the elections of Ms. Zanella Mashabe. Is she with us? Eswatini. Kindly vote for the candidate who is running unopposed. Thank you. The candidate has won as she ran unopposed. We wish her good luck with her tasks. We have a video that has been sent to us by Mrs. Cynthia Lopez Castro, and we shall be viewing the video together.
Madam President of the IPU, Ms. Tulia Axon, my dear friend, Mr. Secretary General of the IPU and Chairperson of the International Gender Champions, Martin Chungong, Madam First Vice President of the Bureau of Women Parliamentarians, and the Second Vice President, Aida Nassif, and my dear friend, Ilimi. Dear colleagues, distinguished guests, my dear sisters, friends all around the world, a big hello to all of you from Mexico. I am very sad not to be able to be with you today, and I miss you very much. However, my duty for my country is keeping me away for a very good reason. Presidential and senatorial elections are soon taking place in Mexico, and I am the candidate of the Senate of Mexico City. As women parliamentarians, you are the best place to know that this means and how much the battle is important. As I campaign, I am inspired by all of you who made it in your respective parliaments. I get strength from your success, and I go from an electoral rally to another, give TV, media interviews, and convince people for voting for me. Mexico City is 9 million people that they have to vote. I trust that your good vibes are going to cross the Atlantic all the way from Geneva and reach me to support my campaign. Wish me luck. Dear colleagues and friends, I am proud that IPU has just realized fresh data on women in parliament. This data alert us on a too slow and too small progress, with only 26.9% of women in parliament today. We have not even reached the 30 minimum percentage objective yet. As I am campaigning, I am reminded of how difficult it is and of the challenges and barriers that we as women encounter. I am also reminded how much this forum is a precious platform for solidarity and support among women from all around the world. I want to offer us even more of such important platforms by having an IPU conference of women parliamentarians every year, starting in 2025 in Mexico. I'm so happy about that, and I want to thank you, the support of our President Tulia, our Secretary General, and all the Executive Committee. I am also reminded of how measures to promote equal participation of men and women in Parliament are important. In Mexico, we fought hard to have parity quotas that succeed in leading us to a parity in Parliament. I wish that this could happen everywhere, and you can count on my support to share my experience, and that in my country, as well as to advocate with your advantage parity everywhere. Dear colleagues and friends, as I go back to a long day of campaigning, I know that I leave you in the good hands of Ms. Ilimi Farida, the first Vice President of the Bureau of Women Parliamentarians. My dear sister, good luck, who will share this 37th session of the forum. I thank her for her support, and I wish you, all of you, a productive, inspiring, and interesting session. Don't miss me too much. I will see you in the next assembly in Geneva. I send you a big hug from Mexico to all my friends, my dear sisters, the members of the Bureau. I hope to see you very soon.
نتمنى لها النجاح
We wish her full success in the elections, and we will see her, and that we will see her in the next General Assembly. And I wish you also full success in the upcoming sessions. We conclude our current session. Thank you.